Before we get into the video, I do want to highlight a very important initiative that both Grapes and Hawk are doing for the 2024 CLOL season. So if you haven't heard, or if you've been living under a rock, or if you haven't seen the news, the 2024 CLOL season will not be having an official broadcast. With that information, Grapes and Hawk have decided to crowdfund a fully streamed and fully produced 2024 CLOL broadcast. If you care about collegiate, please consider donating. No amount is too little and everything helps. If you can't donate, please think about retweeting it and resharing it through all your social media pages. I think it's really important for the CLOL community that every player in Top 32 deserves to have their story told. With that being said, let's get into the video. The group we'll be talking about in this video is Group E. This group consists of Bethany University, UC Irvine, Grandview University, and Boston University. And the big thing around this group for me when looking at the teams and looking at the rosters is that a couple of these teams have had some pretty late changes into their rosters, right? Into playoffs. They've had to swap some players around, both with Bethany and UC Irvine. And for me, a lot of these teams forms towards the end of the season and towards the end of the CLOL season definitely raises a lot of question marks around me. They can either be really, really good and be on form and be on point, or they might just completely, fall out and lose to all the Group D teams that they're facing against. So this is a very confusing group for me. The first team we'll be talking about is Bethany University. They compete in the CLOL North Conference. They went 6-1 in their group, then losing 3-1 to Maryville University in the quarters, and then winning their 5th place match to end 5th overall. Their roster consists of top laner Dog2, who was role swapped from bottom late into the season, jungler Amazing, mid Mental, AD carry Yoon, and support Gweiss. This is a very interesting roster because they have a pro jungler or a former pro player on their roster who definitely seems to be like the lead shot caller and can definitely lead them to victories. They occasionally run these double AD carry compositions with Dog2 playing AD carries in the top lane and Yoon playing AD carries in the bottom lane. He's played stuff like Vayne, Lucian, Zeri. I think I've seen Sivir from Dog2. They've just been running like some AD carries in there and having some pretty decent success, at least in lane and in their matches. Amazing tends to play a lot of these ganking junglers. Lee Sin, Volibear, Rek'Sai has had some pop-off games on Lee Sin. But as we get later into the season or later into the playoffs, Dog2 has been shown to play some top laners, albeit very little. Things like Trundle, Yone, Gnar, top laners that he feels he can kind of do work on or carry on potentially. Mental, their mid laner, plays a lot of Ahri, Talia, Hui, has a pocket TF and Lissandra ready and to combine with their jungler Amazing and kind of make plays across the map. For me, the big thing about this team is that both their mid laner and their jungler can carry for this team, but the Yoon Dog2 situation where they have these 2 AD carries playing on their team and obviously one of their better AD carries role swapping top definitely gives them a unique style. Whether that translates to higher levels of competition is a big question mark to me. The thing is, they did take a game off of Maryville University with this Dog2 top laner and Yoon at AD carry kind of roster. So it's not impossible to assume that they can upset one of these Group D teams with this wacky composition. The second team we'll be going over is UC Irvine. They compete in the CLOL West Conference. They went 7-0 in their group, then lost 3-0 to Weber in the semifinals, then beat USC to end 3rd place overall in the West. Their roster consists of top laner Elated, jungler Mike Young, mid laner Cinna, bot laner Gorica, and Carillion as their support player. UC Irvine is another one of those teams that has a former pro player in the jungle role. In this case, though, Mike Young has been playing for UC Irvine for a bit now, as opposed to Bethany, who just recently, I believe, acquired Amazing. In the same vein, Mike Young will play a lot of Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Wukong, Vi. He really drives the early game for UC Irvine. But in this case, their top laner, Elated, tends to get a lot of that jungle attention because he plays a lot of these carry champions. Rumble, Fiora, Mordekaiser, Gwen, Camille. He tends to get really good leads and can carry UC Irvine through some of these mid-game team fights. Their mid laner, Cinna, is very proficient on the roaming mid laners. Think Asol, Talia, Twisted Fate, these kinds of champions, even the Corki as well. Just has more proficiency and more effect on the map on these champions. The big question for me is around this bottom lane of Gorica and Carillion. Carillion was added in as a player for their final match against USC. He wasn't playing with UC Irvine for a majority of the season. It was actually Light Pulse, but they felt that they needed a change, and Cerulean stepped in. He stepped up and they ended up beating USC 3-2. I think the big question mark for me around this team is how are they going to translate up to the higher levels of play, especially with adding a player so late into the season, not having a ton of scrim time. Gorica, when he was playing with Light Pulse, used to play a lot of Draven and Ezreal with like Karma and these engage supports. Cerulean can definitely play the tank supports, but I don't know if they can bust out some of those like mage or poke heavy supports that Light Pulse used to bring out with Gorica here. The third team we'll be going over is Grandview University. They compete in the Midwest Esports Conference. They went 6-1 in the regular season, undefeated until grand finals when they were in the playoffs, where they lost to Purdue Northwest 3-0 overall, ending up with a second place finish. Their roster consists of top laner Strict Proctor, jungler Castle, mid laner Jinkall, bottom laner Nightstar, and support Pluto. This team has a tendency to have very slow early games. The team prefers to scale and play team fights out and use some of their high scaling champions in the mid lane, in the bottom lane to just win out and outvalue in a lot of these team fights. They will go down in gold very consistently, about 1 to 2,000, but that hasn't really stopped them from playing their game. Top lane is really relegated to these tank duties, things like Ornn, Scion, the new tank Rek'Sai. Strict Proctor has been playing a ton of the tanks and just being this big body frontline for Jinkall, for Nightstar to get the damage off. Castle is a jack of all trades jungler, is better known for his Viego and the more aggressive stuff, but has adapted well to things with the Sejuani, with the Maokai, these more utility tank junglers. But I think he's best played when he's on the Xin Zhao, on the Lee Sin, and on this Viego, where he can kind of pop off and carry in some of these early game fights. Pluto functions as the primary engage for this team, picking a lot of Rakan, Nautilus, Rel, where Nightstar is much more proficient on late game carries. Think Zeri, Varus, Kog'Maw, this kind of stuff. It's really rough for Grandview University because Pluto tends to give his life a lot to start team fights off, whereas it should be Strict Proctor starting off these engages with champions like Ornn and Scion and such. It's kind of rough for this GVU roster to sometimes get these team fights started, but once they get going, Jinkall and Nightstar tend to just run amok in these team fights and clean up very well with the champions like Asol, like the Akali, like the Zeri, like the Xayah that Nightstar will pick. They tend to run some of these team fights as long as they can start it off and get it going. Final team we'll be talking about is Boston University. They compete in the CLOL East Conference. They went 6-1 in their groups, losing to St. Clair in the quarterfinals and then beating University of Waterloo in the 5th place match to end up 5th overall. Their roster consists of top laner Sloppy Thirds, jungler Eccentric, mid laner Samikin, bottom laner Shaminian, and support Chairman Pao. The comps that Boston University tend to play are designed to create a lot of space for both Samikin and Shaminian to carry these fights. Samikin, being their star player, tends to draw a lot of bans, is a very highly proficient player on a ton of champions. Think Hui, Lux, Talia. He has a Zoe that almost gets permabanned because he's known as kind of like a Zoe one trick, but has really expanded his champion pool this year and actually qualified for the new NACL summer season in 2024. He's a big threat and can pump out tons of damage on pretty much any mage champion that you can think of. Another player on this team that I think is very proficient and has a very interesting champion pool is their top laner Sloppy Thirds. He plays the standard stuff like Renekton and Gnar, but will have a Kled, a Rek'Sai, and Aatrox ready in the back pocket. He's one of the few top laners I know that's willing to regularly pick Kled into a lot of these matchups. But Shaminian will just play a lot of these scaling Jinx, Senna, Varus kind of stuff, and their support player Chairman Pao has the standard tank supports on lockdown, but has the ability to flex Poppy between support and jungle, and plays Ashe, Bard, and Milio, and will block in that Ornn with that Senna pairing if possible. So Chairman Pao is definitely like an X-Factor support player where he has the standard stuff down, but definitely dips into the more avant-garde things. Their jungler Eccentric is just kind of relegated to playing things like Xin Zhao, Vi, Poppy, right? Vi is just that one button engage to allow a ton of damage to come out for Samikin, for Shaminian, to get some of these fights started, right? One of the main things for this team is that they just need to make sure they don't go down too hard in gold in the early game, and they just play around their mid laner and their AD carry, pumping out as much DPS as possible once they're in the proper positions. Sammykin can just solo carry Boston University. He did it against Waterloo. He's done it in the East before, and he's obviously has the capability as a mid laner just mechanically outplay a lot of the Group D teams. That wraps up our conversations around Group E, and I think Group E and D matches tend to be some of the closest we have in the round of 32. I think Bethany, UC Irvine, Grandview, and Boston all have the capability of beating a lot of these Group D teams. They've got the right pieces, they've got the right components, they have a playstyle that they like to stick to, and it works, and it's gotten them victories before. So it'll be really interesting to see how they match up against Group D. Now that we're finally through all the lower seeded groups, H, G, F, and E, in our next video, we'll be going over all the higher seeded groups, starting off with Group D, that consists of Illinois State University, Oklahoma Christian, Harrisburg, and UC San Diego. See you in the next video.